Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever stopped to think about what it actually takes to protect something as huge as, well, intangible as the night sky? What if that protection wasn't just some nice idea, but actual national law, something crucial for, really cutting-edge science? Today, we're digging into exactly that. South Africa's Astronomy Geographic Advantage Act of 2007. It's this really fascinating law designed to protect the country's unique natural assets, specifically for astronomy. I'm really curious how a country even starts to legislate something like that.
It really is an incredible piece of foresight.
Hmm.
Our mission here is to sort of unpack this act. What's its purpose? What are the key rules, the legal thinking behind it, and importantly, how does it actually work in the real world? We'll try to break it down using straightforward language, but we'll also touch on some legal ideas that might interest, say, law students listening in. We're basically pulling out the crucial bits from the act itself.
Okay, great. So let's start right at the beginning. What exactly is Astronomy Geographic Advantage? It sounds quite specific.
It is, yeah. The act itself defines, it talks about features that make a place uniquely good for astronomy and related science. We're talking about really specific things here. Super clear air, high atmosphere transparency, very low light pollution, not many people around, and, this is critical, minimal radio frequency interference. Like static or electronic noise getting in the way. These are the sort of pristine conditions you need to really see and hear the universe properly.
Right, no interference.
Exactly. And when the Act mentions astronomy and related scientific endeavors, it's thinking quite broadly. It covers optical telescopes, radio dishes, gamma ray, cosmic ray astronomy, even things like observing the sun or our planet's magnetosphere. And it also includes the big deep space radio dishes they use for managing space missions. So it's not just looking up, it's this whole ecosystem of cosmic research.
Okay, so these conditions are obviously rare and valuable. Why did South Africa feel the need for a whole specific act? What are the main goals?
Well, the Act lays out some really clear objectives. First, obviously, it's about pushing astronomy forward within South Africa itself. Second, it aims to build up skills and expertise, not just in South Africa, but across Southern Africa, which has this great ripple effect on science education and capacity in the region. It also specifically focuses on identifying and protecting the areas needed for nationally important astronomy projects, like the Square Kilometre Array precursors.
Ah, okay. So pinpointing those key locations.
Precisely. And beyond that, it sets up a national system of protected areas to make sure these unique geographic advantages don't get eroded over time. It gives legal teeth to regulate things like light pollution and radio frequency interference, RFI, which, as we said, are the biggest enemies of clear observations. And finally, it provides the whole framework for declaring these areas, managing them, and allowing the government, specifically the minister responsible for science, to really champion preserving this advantage for the whole region.
That's quite a scope. And you mentioned it's far-reaching. Does that mean it applies beyond just, the landmass of South Africa?
It does, yeah. The Act explicitly states it applies to South Africa's exclusive economic zone and its continental shelf. So the reach is pretty extensive, covering key maritime areas too.
Interesting. So potentially offshore activities could be regulated.
Potentially, yes, if they could impact an observatory. And here's something legally quite powerful. The Act says its rules generally override other national laws if there's a conflict about managing an astronomy area, specifically concerning light pollution, flights overhead, or RFI.
Wow. Okay. So it takes precedence.
In those specific circumstances, yes. It's a strong statement about national priorities. It means, say, a local building code about lighting might have to give way if it conflicts with the need for darkness in a protected astronomy zone. And it goes further. Municipalities actually have to incorporate the Act's objectives into their big local plans, their integrated development plans, or IDPs. So local government planning has to take astronomy needs into account.
That's a really significant legal tool. So how do they actually, draw these invisible lines on the map? You mentioned different layers of protection.
Exactly. It's not just one big bubble. The minister has the general power to declare pretty much any area in the Republic an astronomy advantage area. There are some exclusions, like major cities, but it's mostly nationwide. But doing this isn't unilateral. It needs the formal agreement, the concurrence of the Minister for Local Government, the provincial premier, and any municipality involved. So multiple levels of government have to sign off. And the whole point of declaring these areas is, well, protection, enhancing them by restricting activities that cause interference and managing them in the public interest.
Right. And you said there are different types of areas, layers almost.
Yes, 3 distinct types based on sensitivity. First, you have the core astronomy advantage areas. These are the absolute most protected zones. They're for places where the actual telescopes, radio, or optical are located, or where they're planned, or where really sensitive devices sit. Basically, the heart of the scientific work.
Okay, the inner sanctum.
Kind of, yeah. And declaring these is a serious process. It needs wide public consultation, and this is crucial. Private landowners inside these areas must be notified directly by registered mail. It's about due process.
Got it. So landowners are directly informed. What's the next layer out?
Those are the central astronomy advantage areas. You can think of these as immediate buffer zones right around the core areas. Their main purpose is to control activities outside the core that might still negatively affect it, like stray light spilling over or radio noise. You can even have several central zones around one core area if needed. The declaration process is similar: public input, direct notification to landowners. So quite stringent.
Core, then central buffers, and the third type.
That's the coordinated astronomy advantage areas. These are much broader buffer zones, often covering larger regions. They're areas sensitive to development because they're nearby, or they have some unique astronomical quality themselves. They could also be areas sort of earmarked for potential future core or central status. And an interesting point here is the minister is encouraged to declare these for a whole municipal area if possible, rather than just bits and pieces. It encourages more integrated planning.
That makes sense, a more holistic approach. Who can actually start this whole declaration process? Is it just the government deciding?
Not always. The minister can, of course. But a private landowner can also approach the minister and request a declaration for their area. Or the National Research Foundation, the NRF, the main science funding body, can initiate the process too. So it allows for input from landowners and the scientific community itself.
Okay, that's good to know.
And there's a very practical but vital step. For core and central areas, the declaration has to be formally notified to the Registrar of Deeds.
Ah, so it gets recorded against the property title.
Exactly. It means if you're buying land in one of these zones, its status as a protected astronomy area is right there on the official documents. Total transparency for future owners.
Right, that's important. So once these areas are set up, how are they actually managed day to day? And what are the rules on the ground, especially in those core zones? I imagine they're pretty tight.
They are. The management falls to management authorities. The minister assigns this role, usually to a public body like the NRF or a related entity. A key job for them is keeping a register of all interested and affected parties, landowners, local communities, etc. Anyone can look at this register or ask to be added. And if the minister thinks it's necessary, these authorities have to create detailed management plans for their areas. This isn't done in isolation. It has to be in consultation with landowners, local government, registered parties, everyone involved. It's meant to be collaborative.
Okay, so there's planning and stakeholder lists. What about actual rules? Like, can I use my phone in a core area?
Good question. For core areas, the management authority can actually set internal rules. And yes, these can be very specific. They can prohibit things like cell phones or other devices that might cause radio interference or even light pollution unless they're completely switched off.
Wow.
Yeah, these rules apply to everyone, staff, visitors, everybody. And breaking them can even lead to fines. It just shows the extreme sensitivity needed for this kind of science.
That definitely highlights it. But what about private land? If my farm ends up in a core or central area, what happens? That must be a major concern for people.
It is. And the Act provides a mechanism called co-management agreements. These are formal deals the management authority can make with landowners, communities, or other groups. They can cover all sorts of things, maybe continued occupation, specific limits on lights or machinery that causes RFI, access arrangements.
Okay, so tailored agreements.
Exactly. And here's a really crucial legal point. These agreements are binding on successors in title, meaning they stick with the land, not just the current owner. If the property is sold, the new owner is bound by the same agreement. This ensures long-term protection.
That's significant.
It is. And importantly, the management authority has to pay the costs of registering these agreements against the title deeds. There's also a mechanism to remove a management authority if they aren't doing their job properly, ensuring accountability.
Okay, let's talk specifics. Access seems like a big one, especially for core areas. If I own land there, can I still come and go?
Generally, for core astronomy advantage areas, you can't just wander in or live there without written permission from the management authority. And you certainly can't bring in things that cause interference, radios, certain electronics, unless they're off.
But what about the landowner?
Right, there are exceptions. Owners and lawful occupiers of private land within the core area are allowed access, but it's usually subject to the terms of their co-management agreement. And obviously, essential services police, emergency responders, customs officials can enter when necessary, but they usually have to report their entry afterwards.
Makes sense. What about the sky above? You mentioned flights.
Yes, airspace is a big deal. A core and central area includes the airspace directly above it, often up to an astonishing 18,500 meters. That's over 60,000 feet, or even higher if declared.
Seriously, that high?
Seriously. The minister, working with the Civil Aviation Authority, can actually prohibit or restrict flights over these zones. And to make sure pilots know, these restrictions must be marked on official aviation maps.
Okay, that covers access and airspace. What about the really big threats, light and radio noise? How does the Act tackle those head-on?
They're absolutely central. For the radio frequency spectrum, the minister, again needing agreement from ICASA, the Communications Authority has pretty sweeping powers. They can prohibit or limit specific radio frequencies in these areas. They can even require users to switch from analog to digital signals or completely move their operating frequencies elsewhere.
So they can basically clear the airwaves.
In protected areas, yes. And significantly, ICASA is legally barred from issuing new broadcasting or spectrum licenses that would cause interference in core or central areas, unless the license itself includes specific measures to prevent that interference. It's a very strong protection against future problems.
That sounds crucial.
It is. And as always, there needs to be public consultation and direct notification for these kinds of restrictions.
And what about activities on the ground that cause problems, like building sites or industry?
Right. The Act allows the minister, again with ICASA's okay where relevant, to identify declared activities in core or central astronomy advantage areas. And this is powerful. The minister can prohibit or strictly restrict a whole list of things. We're talking about prospecting and mining, installing fixed sources of RFI, certain industrial processes, building new businesses or houses or recreational facilities, expanding roads or railways, building airfields, even large-scale electricity generation or transmission lines. And of course, anything causing light or air pollution.
So pretty much anything that could disrupt the observations can be stopped.
Potentially, yes, within those core and central zones. Existing activities that were lawful before the declaration can be reviewed, and if stopping them significantly impacts constitutional rights, like property rights, compensation might be payable under expropriation law.
How does that differ for the wider coordinated areas?
It's a slightly later touch there. For coordinated astronomy advantage areas, the minister identifies activities that might be detrimental things, like fixed RFI sources, light pollution sources. These are called identified activities. If you want to undertake one of these identified activities in a coordinated area, you generally need authorization. This might involve meeting specific standards, getting an exemption, or getting written permission from a designated competent authority. An environmental impact assessment might be required, and if the activity involves broadcasting, then ICASA is the competent authority. So it's more about assessment and management than outright prohibition, reflecting the buffer zone nature.
It really sounds like a huge amount of power rests with the minister and these authorities. Balancing that with the development must be a constant challenge.
It definitely is a balancing act. But remember, the act isn't just about stopping things. It's also designed to actively promote astronomy. For instance, the minister can declare any scientific project as falling under astronomy and related scientific endeavors, or any piece of equipment as an astronomy device. And here's a fascinating legal point, especially for those interested in law. The main law governing electronic communications in South Africa, the Electronic Communications Act, does not apply to these specifically declared astronomy devices or the authorities managing them.
Wow, really? So they're exempt from standard telecom regulations?
Yes. It's a significant carve-out. It basically says these scientific instruments are so important nationally that they operate under their own specific rules set by this act, not the general rules for phones and broadcasting. It shields them from regulations that might accidentally hinder the science.
That is a big deal. What about the actual physical stuff, the cables, the buildings, the dishes themselves? How does the Act handle the need to build and maintain that infrastructure, especially if it needs to cross private land?
It grants quite strong infrastructure rights to the authorities managing these astronomy devices, treating them a bit like essential utilities. This gives them special legal powers. For example, they have the right to enter onto land private or public waterways, even railways, to build, maintain, inspect, or alter their devices. They can construct pipes or tunnels under streets, provided they give notice to the local authority. There are clear rules about removing devices if needed. Usually the authority pays, and about putting up fences or gates if they cross private land during construction.
What about things like trees getting in the way?
Addressed. The management authority can actually require a landowner to cut or trim trees or shrubs that are obstructing an astronomy device. But, importantly, the authority have to cover the cost of that. There are also rules about adjusting the height or depth of cables or pipes if they unreasonably interfere with a landowner's use of their property, and anyone else planning to build something significant, like a railway or power line in an astronomy advantage area, has to make sure their plans conform to the standards set by the Astronomy Device Management Authority. It ensures compatibility.
So the infrastructure is really prioritized.
Yes, within the framework of the Act. And thinking bigger, the minister can also enter into international agreements. This could be for managing devices jointly with other countries, coordinating efforts, or promoting the astronomy advantage across the Southern African region. It recognizes that astronomy is often a global collaborative effort.
Right, science without borders. Are there national standards to help guide things like lighting, to prevent problems proactively?
Yes, definitely. The minister, again, usually with ICASA's agreement for radio issues, can set national standards. These can cover controlling light pollution in great detail. Think specific rules on shielding fixtures so light goes down, not up, limits on how high lights can be mounted, maximum brightness levels, lumen or wattage limits, even curfews for when certain lights must be switched off. They can specify preferred types of lighting, like low-pressure sodium, which is less disruptive to telescopes, rules for billboard lighting, and processes for getting permits. These standards can even incorporate existing ones from the South African Bureau of Standards, SABS.
So quite technical and specific.
Very. And ICASA is specifically tasked with setting RFI standards for broadcasting activities outside the core and central areas, aiming to minimize interference spilling over.
This all sounds incredibly comprehensive, but it must have major implications for landowners. You mentioned compensation, but how exactly are land rights handled if the government needs the land or needs to restrict its use significantly?
That's obviously a critical aspect, and Chapter 5 of the Act deals directly with the acquisition of rights, in or to land. Essentially, the minister, working with the Minister of Public Works, has the authority to acquire private land or rights over private land if it's inside or proposed to be inside an astronomy advantage area. This can happen through purchase or exchange, but also through expropriation. If expropriation is used, the Act is very clear that compensation must be paid according to Section 25 of the South African Constitution, which deals with property rights and fair compensation.
So the power exists, but it's constitutionally constrained.
Exactly. It's not arbitrary taking. There's a legal framework for fair compensation. The Act also allows for the cancellation of servitudes, which are rights someone might hold over state land if needed for astronomy purposes.
Okay, and what about public input on all these decisions? Declaring areas, setting rules, potentially acquiring land, it sounds like there needs to be a lot of consultation.
Absolutely, and the Act mandates quite extensive consultation and public participation. It's a whole chapter, Chapter 6. The minister is required to consult with all affected government bodies, other national departments, provincial governments, the MECs, and especially the municipalities involved. Discussions must cover how these decisions impact their local development plans, the IDPs we mentioned.
So government talks to government. What about the public?
There's a formal public participation process required for many key actions under the Act. This isn't just a suggestion box, it's legally mandated. It involves publishing notices in the official government gazette and, importantly, in at least 2 national newspapers. This notice has to give people a reasonable period, usually 60 days, to submit written comments. Sufficient information about the proposed action must be provided so people can comment meaningfully. There's even provision for holding public meetings or allowing people to make oral representations.
And does the minister actually have to listen?
The Act says the minister must give due consideration to all comments and submissions received through this process. And they have to inform the final decision makers about the feedback received. Crucially, there's also a provision allowing affected parties, say, landowners, who feel its declaration severely restricts their rights, to request that the minister initiate expropriation proceedings. It provides a pathway for them to seek compensation if they feel their property rights have effectively been taken.
Okay, so there are processes, but what if someone just ignores the rules? What are the consequences? Does the Act have teeth?
Oh, it definitely has teeth. Chapter 7 deals with compliance and enforcement. If a management authority believes someone isn't complying with the Act or the rules or a co-management agreement, they can issue a compliance notice. This notice will specify what the person is doing wrong and what they need to do to fix it, usually with a deadline.
And if you disagree with the notice?
You could object to the compliance notice. You have 30 days to lodge a formal objection with the minister outlining your reasons. The minister then has to consider the objection.
But what if you just ignore it, or the objection fails?
Failure to comply with a compliance notice is itself an offense under the Act. It can lead to several things. Your permit or authorization could be revoked. The management authority could take steps to remedy the situation themselves and then recover the costs from you. And the matter can be reported to the National Prosecuting Authority for potential criminal charges.
Criminal charges, wow. What kind of penalties are we talking about?
The General Offenses and Penalties section, Section 52, is quite clear. Contravening key provisions like entering a core area unlawfully, doing a prohibited activity without authorization, not complying with national standards, or even just providing false information in an application carries significant penalties. We're talking about a fine of up to 1 million rand, or imprisonment for up to 5 years, or potentially both.
Okay, are 1 million or 5 years? Those are serious deterrents.
They absolutely are. It signals how seriously South Africa takes the protection of these unique astronomical assets.
So who keeps an eye on all this long term? Who makes sure the act is working, the areas are protected, and things are heading in the right direction?
That ongoing oversight role mainly falls to the National Research Foundation, the NRF. Section 47 outlines their powers and functions under the Act. They have a mandate to monitor the status of all the declared areas constantly. They need to report regularly to the minister on how things are going, specifically looking for any encroachments like new sources of light pollution or RFI creeping in. They also identify scientific instruments that might need protection under the Act, or new areas that might warrant declaration. And importantly, they develop strategies for enhancing skills in astronomy, especially focusing on previously disadvantaged groups in the region.
So monitoring, advising, and skills development.
Exactly. They advise the minister, act as a general advisory body on astronomy advantage matters, coordinate the advancement of astronomy nationally, and conduct relevant research. They're the scientific anchor for the Act's implementation.
And does the minister have to do everything personally?
No, there's a delegation power in Section 48. The minister can delegate most powers and duties under the Act to officials within the department or to the NRF or management authorities. The main things the minister cannot delegate are the actual declaration of areas and the making of regulations. Those big policy decisions remain at the ministerial level. And for transparency, there's a requirement to maintain a public register of astronomy advantage areas, Section 49, so anyone can see which areas are protected and what type they are.
Okay. And finally, regulations. Can the minister make detailed rules?
Yes, Section 50 gives the minister broad power to make regulations on almost anything needed to achieve the Act's objectives. This covers management details, access procedures, specific prohibitions, setting up advisory committees, prescribing norms and standards. It's very comprehensive. But critically, making these regulations also requires public consultation and getting concurrence from other relevant ministers or bodies like ICASA where necessary.
So putting it all together, this act really feels like a major statement, a commitment by South Africa to protect these unique conditions for science, essentially legislating a clear view of the universe.
It absolutely is. You can see it as this remarkable fusion of environmental protection principles, a drive for scientific leadership, and a really carefully constructed legal framework. It tries hard to balance that big public good understanding of the cosmos with the rights of individuals on the ground. The level of detail, the mandated public participation, the strong enforcement, it all points to a very sophisticated, very deliberate approach to preserving something incredibly valuable, not just for South Africa, but arguably for global science.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What other unique geographic or natural advantages might your own country have? Maybe something perfect for studying rare wildlife, or a unique geological formation vital for climate research. How would you go about protecting those kinds of assets, not just for today, but for generations far into the future? It's a fascinating question sparked by this look at protecting the stars.